This is the California Liberty Project podcast.
Welcome back to the California Liberty Project podcast. My name is Greg, and once again, thank you for joining us. Thank you very much for tuning in. We've got a great episode today. It's going to be heavy on current events, and it'll be heavy on what's been going on, what you've seen on social media, what you've seen in the news. But first, remember to subscribe to this channel on Spotify, follow us on Apple, Google, and check us out, of course, on Instagram at California Liberty Project, where we're growing there. And then on Twitter at Gregory S. Gordon, or the new account at CA_Liberty_project. So make sure to follow us there. And thank you very much for tuning in. But to jump right in, our guest today is going to be Jordan Henry from Glendale. Now, you might have seen Jordan recently on social media, on some of those accounts, certainly on Instagram, maybe even on the news for those people in Southern California, in the LA area. There's been a lot of events going on in Glendale, some of which have even made national news, along with North Hollywood over at Satakoy Elementary. But I wanted to talk with Jordan because I think Jordan has been on the front lines as a parent activist. And I wanted to get the perspective of events on the ground, what's actually happening. Let's cover some of the facts. And I wanted to hear, Jordan's side of the story. So Jordan, welcome to the California Liberty Project podcast. And thanks very much for being here.
Thanks, Greg. Really good to meet you, man. And thanks for the opportunity to talk. It's really important that people are hearing our message here.
Absolutely. Thanks very much for joining me. So let's just get started with maybe a quick introduction. I know you're a self-described parent activist, which is really cool, which is what we all need to be for those of us who are parents. But what's a little bit of your backstory? You know, as much as you want to share, how did you get into this fight? How did you become a parent activist in Glendale?
Well, first I had kids.
That helps. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got two boys, a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. So they're very young still. They're not in school yet. Well, not in public school for sure yet. Excuse me. And I'm fundamentally, protecting, their educational opportunities in Glendale. And I really empathize with the other parents here who don't have a lot of options. I luckily have some time before I enroll my kids into school to, figure things out a little bit. Will they go to public school? Will they go to private school? Will I homeschool? Luckily, I've, had a little foresight, foreknowledge to accommodate for my family as best as possible. And really, this is what this is all about: is protecting children from. I guess we have to call it a machine, a unionized teacher union machine that protects the bureaucracy that we have in California in public education, that is specifically sexualizing children and allowing teachers to provoke these topics in a minor's mind, in their consciousness, to I think to fundamentally destabilize their identity. And I'm just shocked that we're at this point in society where parents have to defend that, really, that should be like a universal fundamental value that we all share. But these unions, I said it's a machine. It's this inhuman entity that's pushing really extreme agenda onto kids. So fundamentally, that's why I'm here. I could get into my backstory about how I got involved so early, because educational theory, do you want to hear like the specifics about how I became aware of all this so early on?
Sure.
Because
a
lot of people don't get involved as early as I did.
No, I think it's a really interesting part of the story. I think your backstory would be a big piece of this.
Yeah. So, I used to be a musician. I wrote music for TV, like movie trailers, video games. for a while, for a few years in
Oh,
LA.
cool.
And I got
Yeah.
kind of disheartened with that whole business. And I've always loved plants and parks, trees. A big fan of being outdoors. And so I went back to school to Cal Poly Pomona as an adult, as like a 33-year-old, to study landscape architecture. So I went and got a master's at Cal Poly in landscape architecture in 2017. And while I was there, we had a theory class where they exposed us to educational theory, critical pedagogy. So if you've been paying attention at all to critical race theory in the schools, uh, obviously everyone probably listening to this podcast has. I got shown material that is the source material for critical race theory. And it's by a guy named Palu Freire, who, if you listen to James Lindsay at all, he's been, he wrote a whole book on Paulo Freire called The Marxification of Education, where it, goes into the taxonomy, the history, the how we got to this point in American education, how Paulo Freire, a Marxist educational theorist, basically got propped up by these, large entities, elite institutions globally, and then in the States through Harvard and um, other universities, to propagate Marxist education. And I couldn't believe that I was reading this in landscape architecture school. My professor forced us to read it. He told us that his name's Kyle Brown. Go look him up. He's a government employee. He told us that his whole mission in life is based on Freire's work. And so we had to read his book called Pedagogy of the Oppressed. I read the whole thing.
Yeah.
We only had to read like the first chapter, and I was shocked at what I was reading there because he's quoting Marx and Hegel and Che,
Right.
Castro, Mao, Lukács, Lenin.
Yeah.
And I was
The
like,
whole
"Oh,
left-wing
you're
cadre.
a communist. You are a communist, right, sir?" And he said, "Yes."
And they, go ahead.
Yeah, and I couldn't believe that this was a landscape architecture school at a California Polytechnic State University in Pomona. Okay, shocked, and it really opened up my eyes to what was going on in higher ed. And then I dug deeper, and it's in secondary schools, K through 12, elementary schools even. Every teacher in California for sure has been forced to read Freire. Critical race theorists quote Freire. If you have a master's degree or a doctorate in education, you have to buy into this, or at least pretend like you do.
Right. You got to play along.
Oh yeah, but most of them don't play along. They're fully
Sure.
they fully drank the Kool-Aid, and I'm not mincing words. This is a cult. Okay, this is like Jim Jones level cult applied to education.
Right.
And when I realized that, it changed my life. Okay, so I have been paying attention to this since 2017.
Okay.
And now we're at the point where it's blowing up nationally, and it's becoming it's affecting children's sexuality, their identity, the school's policies, the administration, what they believe, what the Democratic Party is pushing. The teachers unions have completely lost it, and they've taken authoritarian control over the state and the party.
They run the state, largely.
Yeah, and they also run the Dodgers. Today is when the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence are at the Dodgers game.
That's right.
I think it's against the Giants.
For everybody, today we're recording this on Friday, June 16th, so we're going to find out. I hope everything is peaceful down there at Dodger Stadium at Chavez Ravine tonight, but I hope that there is a big presence out there. Sorry, go ahead, Jordan. I just wanted to interject with that.
Yeah, so they're doing this pride event, and the people pushed back against. So the story is that the sisters were originally invited, and then the Dodgers got pushed back because normal people hate this. Okay, and they disinvited them, and then the California Teachers Association, of all organizations, got involved and demanded that they re-invite them, and they did. The Dodgers caved. Excuse me. And Scott Wiener has since given the sisters an award for
In the
their
state
expertise.
capitol. That's right. Yeah.
And that is it's extremely offensive. My wife is an atheist essentially, and she's offended by it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm I think everybody should be beside themselves with what's happening in California, what's happening with our tax dollars, what's happening with these unions, the teachers union specifically, that has corrupted this state top to bottom. So
Yeah, and
that
I
is the
think
current state of affairs right now.
it is. That's
Yeah.
good sweeping, but kind of bleak outlook. I think in many ways the mask has been ripped off. And we've seen, certainly with the teachers' unions in this state that are so powerful and so overrepresented in the state legislature. And so much of the government educational complex is, it's built around pleasing them and bending the knee to them and giving them more time off and giving them more money. None of it is about the children. None of it is about teaching. That's all lies. I think people realize that now with the teachers, especially even they changed high school start times around because the teachers wanted to have an extra 30 minutes to sleep in the morning. So now high schools have to start at 8:30 and on down the line. Everything is about placating these powerful teachers unions. It's about power and it's about money. But I think we're in agreement there, certainly.
Yeah, we are. And I think it actually goes deeper than money, unfortunately.
Yeah, power, political power, I'd say. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, the power and the money are tools to perpetuate in this Marxist agenda. Okay, and when I say Marxist agenda, I mean a complete subversion of society and every norm that we cherish, operate under, take for granted. To be frank, um, the, the absolute goal. Okay, so you said, yeah, they're not even, they're not teaching, or they have actually replaced the definition of teaching and learning.
Yes, it's activism.
Teaching and learning, I have to be really explicit here, is a Freirean concept where if you read Pedagogy of the Oppressed, it's about teachers and learners, teaching and learning, oppressor oppressed, and he uses this dynamic, this Hegelian dialectic, to subvert any hierarchy whatsoever, where the student is the teacher is the student. There is no power within the classroom, and spread that out to society, because that's their goal. Okay, that is their goal, is to indoctrinate children into this mode of thinking where the child leads, the teacher enables the child to lead. The teacher is the learner is the teacher, and if that spreads out into society, which it is, this is the goal of a total takeover of all structure and order within American society.
Yes, and it's an attack on the bourgeois. I would say, just to jump on and add to your point, I would say certainly anything that we revere, that we're a part of as traditionalists, any of us who come from any kind of tradition, even a two-parent family, even if you're religious, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, otherwise, anything of that nature is perceived as bourgeois and must be overturned and uprooted. And so in this dialectic you're talking about, it's a great point. It's obviously the Hegelian kind of dialectic goes from, a thesis to the antithesis, and then you keep moving on down the line through history to reach some kind of new synthesis. And the point is never about being consistent, right? With the left, especially kind of the post-Marxist left, whatever this toxic stew of wokeism is now that we have ripping our communities apart, they're never consistent, right? They don't even care what's a man, what's a woman. One minute it's objectification of women is wrong. The next moment it's, well, no, we don't know what a woman is. It's anything that you want to call yourself. And it's really a toxic stew. It's really frightening what's going on.
Yeah, and I'll elaborate more on this Hegelian dialectic. And, this is very highfalutin. This is high level. This is a theoretical thing. And it's not really thesis, antithesis, and then synthesis. That is more of a Kantian approach that Hegel basically, co-opted and put into, this, he kind of put it into Christianity, into this Germanic nationalistic philosophy. And it's more about, I mean, he talks about this like it's about abstract, concrete, abstract. So you've got society, you've got norms, you've got the family. The abstract is, let's say, queerness. Queerness is designed to specifically attack the innocence of childhood and to limit reproduction
To
in future
subvert.
generations.
Yeah. To
And then
subvert the bourgeois.
you go from concrete, abstract, or, in your words, thesis, antithesis, and then it is the becoming, this act of becoming, this spirit of creation through history. A lot of people buy into this, man. A lot of people buy into this. And if you get into it, it's a Gnostic, enterprise.
Yes,
I could get
it
into
is.
this deeper, but
It's almost syncretism. We have to eliminate any particularity, the particularity of the family. We've got to like mix things all together in this new stew. It is Gnostic to some extent, that there's some kind of mystical values. Although half the time they're rejecting metaphysics, right? Rejecting metaphysics and metaphysical based ethics. And yet there's still something mystical or magical about this process that we're undertaking or being subjected to.
that's right. And, my whole goal, to be
Yeah.
quite frank, is to identify this as a mystical enterprise. To say that Freire, let's go back to Freire, his whole goal, if you read one of his books from 1999, I think, or 2000, it's called Pedagogy of Freedom.
Okay.
He explicitly states that his whole mission, this whole project, is Gnostic. He says that it's a Gnostic cycle. The perpetuation of his new pedagogy, this critical analysis of subverting normality, and then re-challenging that and redoing it after it's already been done, to tear it down and to negate. He's constantly talking about negation. That this process is a Gnostic one, to strip us away of this imprisonment that, these people, these Hegelians, whether they're pro-Hegelian or anti-Hegelian, because they believe that like you said, it's like the contradiction, is part of their theory. Whether they're pro-Hegel or anti-Hegel, it's still Hegelian. You understand? The whole process is this Gnostic cycle. And my whole goal is to eventually get this into the on the ground vernacular, on the ground discourse with normal people. So we have a political will, a political backing to support challenging this in the courts. We cannot have this in the schools. This is a violation of our First Amendment rights under the Establishment Clause. There can be no religion specifically identified and endorsed by the government. We all know this. This is Americanism to the core. We've deviated from that in the past in America, and we've challenged it, and we have case law, we have Supreme Court cases that have decided that this is absolutely incongruent with the Constitution. And we had the chance to, in the 50s, in the Red Scare, McCarthyism, to delineate or to designate, Marxism, communism as a religion, and that did not happen. This opportunity is now here before us again, within our generation, to prove through case law, if we can, or legislation, that Freire and critical pedagogy, critical race theory, are fundamentally religious exercises that violate all of our rights. So
yes, yeah. And one of the things I've been saying lately, and this isn't even like an original idea of mine, but essentially all governments are theocracies in the end. Ultimately, there's always an idol. There's either the true God, which is being deferred to, or there's some kind of otherness in place of God, or there's some kind of cult that rises up. Let's keep it that way. There's some kind of national belief. there are symbols that go along with that. There are flags that we raise to the highest point, like we've seen on the White House lawn just this past week, during that day of debauchery. At some point, there is the highest flag. There's the highest symbology of a cult, meaning, that which people are believing in. And I think at the end of the day, that is true, what so many have said, that all governments end up as theocracies. It's just a matter of what is it that we worship? What is it that we metaphysically value the most? That's kind of where I've gone to lately, because
Sure,
what we're seeing is
worry,
not rational.
Well, I agree with you that the government, let's say the American system, could be weaponized against itself to then put up the trans flag in the center of the two American flags of the White House, which should never occur. I absolutely disagree with this, okay? Absolutely. But that is a weaponization of the fundamental tenets of the Constitution. So I don't believe that the flag itself or the government itself, specifically the American government, a liberal republicanism or representative republic, is in and of itself one that would then turn into an inevitable theocracy. I think that our government provided us the tools to challenge that, uh, that tendency. We can fight that with the tools of the government that it's provided us without worshiping the government. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. And I guess I should say what I mean is that we're not explicitly a theocracy. We're not certainly not explicitly saying you have to worship God or you have to be a Christian to be a part of. That's not really what I'm saying.
Yes.
It's almost more what I'm referring to is almost more of this Gnosticism, or what's latent, what's underneath the surface. What is it that we all value the most? And it could just be, this is dominantly a monotheistic country where we have tolerance for those who don't believe, or tolerance for those who have other beliefs, of course. Or is it going to be something new where we have a 30-day National Holy Month where there's debauchery in the streets, where every child in government schools, mind you,
yes,
taxpayer-funded schools, is hearing about the new national religion with flags, with song and dance, with festivities, and maybe even punch and cookies in some schools that we've seen. It's almost like, as Aaron McIntyre says, we're going around wearing the skin suit of the former republic, the skin suit of the former religion, and we're kind of play acting. We've got a new religion that's coming in, but they're making a mockery out of the old bourgeois values.
Yeah, you should go watch. I don't know if you've seen it yet, but Jordan Peterson just had an interview with James Lindsay. And James Lindsay has made this point repeatedly, that Gnosticism, or Marxism in this case, is parasitic. It will constantly latch on to this living organism and then kill it over time to become to survive. And to spread. It's a virus, it's a parasite. There's all these analogies you could use. The skin suit, I think that's great. It's accurate for sure. And we're primarily a monotheistic society. To be honest, that's like beside the point, because I don't care if someone's a pagan. I don't care if someone's a Satanist. I really don't. In America, everybody has the right to freely express themselves, to have their creator, and we even have the right to exercise that politically with our vote.
Sure.
The culture will shape the laws, okay? And so if the culture then is, and what we're talking about with religion, we have to specifically, like, the standard of what is a religion has to be a universal worldview, a creation story, right? And so if you've got children
with a system of ethics,
with a
metaphysics, go on. Sorry, but fundamentally, like, we're talking about, like, the essence of being, right? That, I guess that's the metaphysical realm, right.
And so when you've got the government coming in and saying you're assigned your sex at birth, you're not actually this, they are then challenging a creation. They're creating a creation myth by saying, oh, no, like, this assignment of sex is not an innate one. It didn't occur naturally, and the natural rights that we have are based on that, that precursor to the Constitution, the inalienable rights. They come before government, right? And so when you're then saying, the government then says that, oh no, actually this biological or natural thing that you have been given, and which like maps on to 99.999% of the population, um, is actually just like a legal definition assigned to you by some authority, some medical authority. That is in and of itself a challenge. Is a religious statement. It's a faith statement.
Yes. Yeah. It is.
And that, yeah. So we're totally in agreement here. It's just that
Yeah.
we have to identify what we're dealing with here, and people.
Yes.
I don't think enough people understand that. You clearly understand. I think it's great that you understand. It's like so easy to talk to you about this, but not enough people do understand that that's what we're dealing with, is a religious subversion of the state. And it's
Jordan,
truly shocking to see.
It is. So this is an aside, and then I'm really curious to talk to you about some specifics. But in the past few weeks, I've had some great kind of right-wing guests, and one of them is a Chronicles Magazine podcast host, CJ Engel, and he works with the right-wing paleoconservative scholar Paul Gottfried. And so I don't know if you've ever read some of Paul Gottfried's stuff, but he's a scholar. He did his PhD, I think, at Yale under Marcuse. And so certainly if you're familiar with Lindsay and his writings, you probably read about Marcuse. So he was a Marcuse student. Now he's a right winger, like I don't mean Fox News. I don't mean Conservative Inc. I mean like an actual right winger. And
are we talking like an identitarian right winger?
No. Not like that. Not like this, not with the racist garbage or any of that stuff. But just as a true right winger, just believing in natural hierarchies. Rejecting, the conservative kind of capitulation to the spirit of the age and whatnot. Kind of a paleoconservative. He's like the godfather of paleoconservatives.
Yeah, but, I've never heard this term actually. Okay,
yeah, he's paleo, and I've always kind of considered myself on the paleo side, kind of paleo libertarian. But at any rate, he's a wonderful scholar. Controversial, certainly, but what I wanted to ask you about is if you'd seen any of his back and forth with James Lindsay. And I have a lot of respect for what James Lindsay has done as well, kind of uncovering this radical, insane, wokist left. But there have been some articles back and forth. I know Paul Gottfried wrote one of them. And what he's basically saying is that he disagrees with James Lindsay. Paul is almost thinking that this new radical wokeism is not really Marxist. We're looking at like a post-Marxist left where, the Marxists were very much unwoke. Way back in the day, they were really concerned with historical materialism and economics and, those conditions driving humanity, driving the world. And a lot of folks now are almost worried about or thinking, maybe it's semantical, but we're dealing with this almost a post-Marxist left where, believe it or not, it would almost be a welcome relief to go back to the Marxist-Leninists because they were so unwoke. This radical new kind of post-Frankfurt school leftism is so unmoored from reality or even economics. Now, I believe they're bad economics, communism, but they're so unmoored from everything that the left used to stand for. This is like a radical new post-Marxist revolutionary left. At any rate, those are really interesting articles to go back and read because they're both very scholarly. I mean, James Lindsay is great, and Paul Gottfried he's a really interesting dude. I didn't know if you'd seen any of that kind of back and forth 2 or 3 months ago.
No, I haven't. I'll go look into it.
Yeah.
What I'll say is that
go ahead.
The dialectic. Hey, we're not dealing with Hegelianism either, okay? But it still applies. We're not dealing with economic Marxist theory, but it still applies. We're talking about Gnosticism. We're talking about a parasite on society, and it reshapes and reforms and becomes a new entity or a new practice continually over time. And that's like the definition of it, is that there's no stasis whatsoever. There's no stability whatsoever within one's consciousness and as it relates to society. Okay. Yeah. So I agree, but I disagree because I would never justify any authoritarianism. like a
Sure.
Leninist approach, I think it all should be condemned 100%. I
Yes.
don't care. I would never say, "Oh, the woke are evil," and so the non-woke Marxists actually have a point here, because no, they're all authoritarian. Okay, fundamentally, like, authoritarianism is when the government has required it infiltrates the privacy of your life, the
Right.
privacy for you to believe whatever you want to believe. If you want to be a Marxist, God bless you. Go be a Marxist. Go do that. Go form your own little communist society. I don't care. I really don't. Keep it out of the government.
Right. Right. Yeah, the term dictatorship of the proletariat, it's like, well, time out here. I don't, for one thing, I'm not a hammer swinger in a factory. God bless people who
Of
are,
course.
but that's very much a 19th century kind of formulation anyway. But I don't
Yeah,
want a dictatorship of any particular group of workers. So
that's right.
yeah, your point is a good one. It sounds like you and I both reject all forms of authoritarianism.
Yeah,
Although
yeah.
on the right, there's more and more of a growing interest in, I don't want to say authoritarian, but a strong leadership to put down some of this insanity. And I don't know if the left is intentionally doing some of this, but they're triggering a
Oh yeah.
massive backlash with what they're doing. And when you target children, you are unmooring society from anything that we have known or valued in the past. Certainly with our quote bourgeois values, right?
Right. Yeah,
And
they are provocateurs. That is the
yes,
for the people who really know what's going on. I'm not even saying like the administration at Glendale Unified, because that's what we're talking about.
yeah. Let's
We
talk
we spent
about
this whole time
Glendale.
talking about
Yeah,
theory, okay? But like even the people on the ground at Glendale Unified instituting these policies, they're part of the union. They work for these gender spectrum clinics that develop gender support plans. They don't understand what they're actually doing is serving a purpose of this theoretical point to provoke the right to make the same authoritarian blunders that they're
right,
making.
right.
They're projecting their own authoritarianism onto the right for them to take the bait.
Yeah.
And that's what we're seeing in Glendale. Okay?
Yeah, and let's talk about that. What are kind of the facts? If you could take us through kind of like as you see them, what are the key facts that we all need to know for those of us who don't live in Glendale but maybe have seen, the news stories and social
Yeah.
media hits? What's been going on down in Glendale? Take us through some of the facts of the matter.
Sure. I'm gonna talk here for like a good chunk of time. So,
Perfect.
years ago, California, I mean, we're talking about California too. They passed
Yeah.
the Fair Act, which requires schools to teach about LGBTQ issues, representation, history, historical figures like Harvey Milk, for instance,
Right.
in schools, and students are not allowed to opt out. So there are curriculum changes that are happening. And then also in like 2013, 2014, California passed these non-discrimination policies through the Board of Ed that require students or schools to affirm students' gender identity changes.
Right.
Um, yeah, and that affirmation limits, or actually institutes the school to, they're required to hide that, to conceal that from parents. That's the big issue going on. If the student says, yes, I am now a boy, I want to use the boys locker room, I want to change in there in front of all these other boys and in front of the male coach, and nobody has a choice. The school has to affirm that. They have to accept that. They have to use pronouns. The administration, the teachers, the staff, and the students. If the staff refuses to use the pronouns, or the students, they're expelled or fired from the school. It's a misdemeanor. It's harassment. Okay, so that we're talking
Yeah.
about compelled speech. There's a they develop these gender support plans. So we have an assistant superintendent that's been in the district for 30 years. She used to be a teacher, then a principal. Now she's assistant superintendent. She writes all of our board policies, and then basically, serves them up to the board, and they all pass them. Even the conservatives, they all pass them without question. They don't even read them, I think, and
Yeah.
if they do, they're psychotic. And the policies are non-discrimination policies that specifically state we will discriminate against
Right.
parents, and we will select which parents are told what based on their personal private beliefs, religious, political beliefs, violates this. We're talking about fundamental violation of our constitutional rights.
Mm-hmm.
So I mentioned that she works with Gender Spectrum. That's that outside organization that develops these support plans, gender support plans.
Okay.
They have a ranking system for parents on a scale of 1 to 10 on how affirming they are. If they don't meet a certain threshold, and no one knows what that number is or how they determine that, the school will not tell parents that their child has transitioned, has a new name, has new pronouns, which facilities they're using, who they're changing in front of. The only way that the parents are obligated to be informed is the change of a permanent record. Once that permanent record is changed, then they're required to tell the parents, right? Um, so that's at the high administrative level. Um, the teachers are also pushing this stuff too. We've had multiple situations where teachers have gone way too far with what they're telling students, with videos they're showing. We had a third grade teacher she actually got removed from the classroom because we got a PRA request. We got an email that exposed the fact that she had shown her 8-year-old students a video where a woman was telling these kids in this video, they're like 7-year-olds, they look so young, first graders maybe, telling these children that, she watched the movie Nell. Jodie Foster was naked in the movie. It turned her on. She questioned her sexual orientation because she liked what she saw, right? And
these are
so this
7 and 8
little
year olds.
girl, what's that?
Yeah, 7 and 8 year olds. You said.
Yeah, it
that
shows
were
this little girl's face, and she is the cutest little girl, and she goes like this, and she's like visibly terrified by this, or visibly shocked by this. And the whole point is to provoke children, or to normalize this within a children's mind, that this is normal. She then goes on in this video to say, so what are we to the gay community? And a little kid says, I'm a gay icon. And she says, right. So this third grade teacher showed that video. She at our last school board meeting, she was there present. She's protected by the school district for sure. She was never fired. She was removed from her classroom, and then was moved into like this remote learning role. So she's just teaching online classes now within the district. But she was at our last board meeting, linking arms with Antifa, linking arms with the revolutionary communists. Literally, they have signs that say we're revolutionary communists. This is who we're dealing with, okay?
Yeah.
We have another teacher, a middle school, I think she's a seventh grade English teacher, who started this GSA club. That's the Gay Straight Alliance. Now it's called the Gender Sexuality Alliance. 7th graders, okay? So these kids are going through puberty right now. At that point, they're just entered puberty. She started this group with her own money, with her husband, who was a counselor at the school. Okay, they pressured the principal, who did not want to start the GSA, they basically peer pressured him. They swore at him. She states this in a CTA, in a California Teachers Association conference that we have on film. Where she says, "Yeah, we pressured him. We chose some select four-letter words to pressure him into allowing us to start this." She, these groups are supposed to be, they're federally required to be started, ran, operated by students. Okay, she said she spent like over $600 on food and flyers to get these kids involved. I know for a fact there was one girl who attended very early on in this process. She is not gay, but she believed that she was after all this. And, she made some decisions that she now regrets. I know that occurred. She's very happily dating a guy now in a normal, happy, heterosexual relationship, 7 years later. And it's really devastating. Like it took her years to overcome that. Okay. As a teenager. All right.
Sure.
This again, I said that Lisa Avery, this is the English teacher who started this. She worked with her counselor husband, who targeted emotionally unstable kids who went and talked to him to join the club. And he had the pride flag up, the trans flag, and saying like, "Oh yeah, come to our meeting, come to our meeting." She literally says that she poached emotionally unstable kids. That's the
Wow.
word she used to get them into her GSA.
Wow.
All right. She's still there. She's still teaching. Okay.
Okay.
Nobody in the administration owns up to this. All right. Um, she also then like says that, the kids trust me so much, they call me mom. I mean,
Wow.
it's so obvious what they're trying to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Subvert and
we have
replace.
other teachers. There's a high school history teacher who chimed into a school board meeting and went on the record on camera saying that she's been applying critical race theory to her educational program for 23 years since she got hired at Glendale Unified.
Yeah.
Okay. She runs the high school GSA. You can't be more transparent. We've got another guy who's at the high school, like, literally a block away from me right here, who got a doctorate in critical study from Claremont Institute, from the Claremont Graduate School. And he's like, "Oh yeah. This is a Marxist enterprise. Yeah, we agree with critical race theory. We agree with Marxist theory." He says that in that same board meeting, on camera, on record. Like these people are explicitly, transparently woke to the point where they have bought in completely. And the problem is that we have, like, Glendale, if you don't know, is like 45% Armenian, and these people are very traditional. Okay,
Sure.
There are all these divisions within the Armenian community. It's actually the diaspora over the past several hundred years has created a really complex global geopolitical network, and a lot of the people that we see, the Armenians that we see in power, are not Armenians.
Yeah,
they're diasporatic. They came from Lebanon, they came from Beirut, they came from Iran. They have been, in the States longer than the Armenians, who, came after the Soviet Union fell. So a lot of those people are, more conservative. A lot of the real Armenians, I can't say real Armenians, but, from Armenia.
Right.
They're more conservative. They're more based. They're more traditional. They're way more Christian. And the political class is largely, not entirely, but largely based on, they're highly educated. They've been in the States longer. They've been more Americanized. They're definitely all sellouts to the Democratic Party.
Sure.
And those factions of elite Armenians compared with, like, I guess you would call them lower class, or no, they're not even lower class, because a lot of them are very wealthy, but like
middle income or working class.
Working class, but it's not even that, because a lot of them are very successful business people, man, like very successful, very wealthy. Okay. But it's just more of like the traditional, people's people, the people who are all about family. That's what we have right now, because the government is largely Armenian, and they have been for a long time. But it's the Democratic Party that's completely inserted itself into that community and, split it apart. And it's really shocking to be part of and to see. And it's so the Armenians, they're pushing back aggressively, and that's what we saw at the last school board meeting that made national news, where we had hundreds of people show up. Antifa was there, and we have videos of Antifa with the backing of a priest who's, like, literally right there with Antifa, a priest holding a trans flag, whispering in the ears of Antifa, keep going, or whatever he's saying. He's definitely encouraging it.
I think I saw this guy. Was he an Anglican priest or something?
I mean, he's an Anglo. Episcopal. I don't know what he is, to be honest.
I think I saw that one on a few social media feeds. But hey, can I ask you something really quick? Can I interject?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
While we're talking about
a huge rant there.
This is great background. I just wanted to interject with a quick question, because you're from Glendale, or living in Glendale. So the Armenian community there, which is approximately, I think you said 45%, a huge plurality there. So how come Glendale? How come so many Armenian Americans or just Armenians have settled in Glendale, that particular area of Southern California?
They originally came to Hollywood. Like if you drive into LA and you drive
Uh-huh.
like on the 101, you see signs for Little Armenia. If you go around there,
Yes.
there's
Yeah.
still like Armenian. There's still like an Armenian concentration in East Hollywood.
Right. Right.
Still
Okay.
restaurants. It's very prevalent there. And then they Glendale's like one of the nicer suburbs of
Yes. Yeah.
LA. It's really nice. Clean streets, just beautiful. It's like got there. It's a well planned city. It's not big. It's like 205,000 people. Um, really nice neighborhoods, beautiful homes. You know,
Right up to the
it's
mountains, kind of.
it's
Yeah.
the American dream. You know, living in Glendale, in my opinion, it's like it
Yeah.
represents that. And so, as they moved up and became successful business people, they bought real estate here, and
Okay.
they've just they've spread out across like the San Fernando Valley, Los
Yes.
Angeles,
Right.
other districts for sure. Burbank, a ton of Armenians there, and it's even going further than that.
Yeah, even in Sherman Oaks, like my grandmother, that's where my mom grew up. There's I think a pretty sizable community over there too. But yeah,
yeah,
I was just curious why Glendale had such a concentration, but that makes sense.
yeah, it's just a nice place. It's like
Yeah.
and they just got a footing here, and it
Okay.
became the natural organic concentration.
Sure. Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes sense. Okay, so forgive me for that intrusion. I just wanted to
No,
interject. I was kind of
no,
curious about that, but
no, but I do think it's important because here we are in this like cultural division point in America, in California for sure, and in LA County for sure, but in America, like everybody's talking about Glendale right now. Literally
right.
everyone.
Yes. National
And it's
news.
cool to see. I almost can't believe that this happened. Okay, in the past week,
Mm-hmm.
or 10 days or whatever now. Um, and it didn't happen by mistake. It happened because these radical values are challenging traditionalism, and Armenians are largely a specific type of people who don't put up with bullshit. Okay, they have done that for generations, and when I say generations, I'm talking about 1,000 years, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I'm not exaggerating. They became the first officially Christian kingdom, or country, I guess you could say, nation. They were, uh, they fought wars and wars and wars to preserve their values.
Absolutely.
Stalin tried to interbreed them with Muslims and Jews, and that's why you're seeing this conflict with Azerbaijan and Artsakh over the past 2 or 3 years, because the historical region of Artsakh is preserved through Armenian legacy and family descendants, and that you're just seeing like another manifestation of Armenia being attacked from without.
Right.
So they have been in the crosshairs of global dominance and authoritarians since the beginning of recorded history. Okay, yeah. And here we are again. We are now in this new phase of American Armenian history, um, and against the Democratic Party and authoritarianism in
Yeah.
California. Yeah,
And so it's a lot of traditionalism within the Armenian community there in Glendale, which sounds like it's probably a big driver or at least a big backstop against this radical woke leftist agenda in the schools, is what I'm gathering. Because I saw a lot of look like proud Armenians, Armenian Americans gathered under the American flag, but I saw a lot of Armenian presence there in a lot of the news footage and a lot of the
that's
posts
right.
that I saw.
Yeah,
Right. So they've got to be a key part of your constituency in fighting wokeism.
they're everything, man. I am
Yeah.
nothing without. I mean, I kind of like started this wave because I spoke at a school board meeting and had a viral video
Okay.
about Kelly King, that assistant superintendent, doing all that crap with girls in the boys' locker room. You don't have. She says, she has this quote that says, "We don't have boys or there are no girls in the boys' locker room. There
Right.
are only boys in the in the boys'
Right.
locker room." It's not a girl. It's not a girl. It's not a girl.
Right.
That right there just ignited. Okay.
Yeah.
That got shared with everybody who's paying attention, who's got kids in the schools in this community and beyond.
Yeah.
It got talked about on all sorts of different platforms. But I'm just one guy. Okay. I showed up. I've been involved with the schools since 2021 when I moved to Glendale. After I lived in LA, and I'll get back to what I was saying before. But I lived in LA. COVID happened. A bunch of gangs entered. Like Gavin Newsom released all these freaking inmates, 8,000 of them. They came back to my neighborhood in Highland Park, and there were shootings left and right. I had 3 shootings right on my street within like 2 or 3 weeks, and I was like, "We're getting the hell out of here." Yeah. So we moved to Glendale, and I started researching the schools because they have good schools, quote unquote. And I'm like, oh, okay. During George Floyd, y'all instituted critical race theory, critical pedagogy, Frary. They sided with the Southern Poverty Law Center with their Learning for Justice educational program, and it's radical. And I started speaking out against that, and nothing really. I got no traction, because COVID was happening.
Yeah,
ArtSoc was happening. The Armenians were very distracted by these other issues. But now that that's kind of subsided, I spoke at this last meeting about this gender issue, or that was in April when I spoke and got some real attention. And my whole point is that this could not happen without Armenians.
Yeah.
Or there are Hispanics too with us, but this could not happen without Armenians and people with traditional values. And we're so lucky that we live in a country where the ability to defend your private beliefs is explicitly written in our Constitution. The government cannot intrude on that. And here we are, like we're living through history right now, and the democratic machine has challenged these fundamental rights, and we are pushing back. And we have the ability, the minority, I don't think we're actually the minority, but let's just say we are, the supposed minority has that right enshrined in law to be protected.
Yes. So but activists are definitely the minority, man, I would say. Even the great people, the Sons of Liberty, the rabble-rousers who started this great country, they were the minority. Whether it was 20-ish%, 30%, it's always quoted as a minority of patriots who were opposing the Stamp Act, and they were opposing the Townsend Acts, and they were the Boston Tea Party in 1773, and the Sons of Liberty, and then 75. All that stuff was a minority, and 30% were loyalists, and then the other 30% were like watching ESPN and picking their nose or whatever it was, which is kind of what's going on today. It's the activists. I know you guys probably feel like the minority in terms of just population, and you probably are. But
now I don't think we are.
Maybe the majority. I hope so. I certainly
think we are
hope
in Glendale. So. We just need to wake them up and get them voting. That's
okay.
It. That is it. And I think we're gonna really change things.
Yeah, so, and I love.
I think in Glendale we're the majority, but people had no idea what was going on. They just weren't aware.
Okay.
And I mean, these Armenians are like more American than Americans.
Right.
Especially these Democrat Americans. Oh my God. And one of them, who's an Iranian American or Iranian Armenian, who I'm now friends with, I've met so many people over the last 2 months.
I bet.
Who are salt of the earth, man. I just love these people. He's all about Sam Adams, and he posted this quote that says, "It does not take a majority to prevail, but rather an irate, tireless minority, keen on setting brush fires of freedom in the minds of men."
Right. I love that quote.
I love it, man. And
it's thoroughly American.
What's that?
It's thoroughly American, 100% American.
The most American thing. And that's why these people came here. And America is made of immigrants. It always has been, always will be. It is the immigrants that will save us from people who have been, for lack of a better word, psyoped into thinking that like an authoritarian government is like the best way to go.
But a lot of people don't even see it as an authoritarian government. Right, and that's part of the problem.
Protecting children.
It's the Jedi mind trick. It's like, these aren't the droids you're looking for. And it's like, well, you don't realize they control every single factor of every bit of our lives. You know, you got your phone. The FBI can pull out the phone tracking. You know, they can do a geofence. They can tell if you were at the wrong protest, right?
Yeah.
Or if you were peacefully protesting outside of even an abortion clinic, they can pull up your data. When you step out of line, that's what kills me about all these people who say, "Oh, I've got nothing to hide. It doesn't matter. I don't mind the traffic cameras at every stoplight in town. I'm not doing anything wrong." Bullshit, you're not. You're probably committing 3 felonies a day. Isn't that a famous book? And when they want to get you, if you ever step out of line, that's when they come for you. If you're unimportant and you're just watching ESPN or sports ball on TV and picking your nose, yeah, the government doesn't care. They're not going to come after you. But if you ever step out of line, or if you ever show up at a school board meeting and start saying things that are not approved by the regime, that's when they might have to go after you. And that's what's scary and un-American.
The people who claim they have nothing to hide and they totally want the government to invade their privacy. Listen, the way totalitarianism takes hold, I mean, we all know this, is that they have useful idiots who comply, and they will, you know, attack people who are trying to defend their own private rights, their own inalienable rights. But what they don't understand, what Antifa, what the LGBTQ mafia don't understand is, like, they are useful idiots for a regime. Okay?
Sure. Yeah.
This whole trans queer issue has nothing to do with trans queer people or rights. It is a tool for infringements on. It's a tool for a government that will infringe their rights, and for sure it will come after them. Okay, so I'm trying to, like, communicate with my whole group of parents that you're going to be hated for doing this, but you are literally defending the very people who don't want you to speak. Everything you're doing, the fact that you're being hated is validation that you're doing the exact thing necessary to protect their rights. They're just not aware of it, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, it goes so deep. Like, I don't know if you're a Christian, but, like, Christ saying, "Forgive them, Lord, for they know not what they do." Up against an authoritarian regime. Like, we have to forgive these people. They're not aware. They're always going to hate us. They're always going to think we're bigoted, hateful. They want to suppress our speech. Yeah. And that's exactly why we're doing this. It's for those people. It's for Antifa. It is for, I'm telling you, man, even the fact, I mean, yeah, they're violent. We shouldn't, I do not condone violence. I want peace. But it is for the people to express their viewpoint, even if it's a radical point of view that is specifically designed to subvert America, like burning the flag, for instance. I'm defending their rights, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I used to be there as well. I guess I've kind of just, I don't want to say I've been blackpilled, but you know how everyone always quotes that old quote, you know, I'll defend your right to say something that I disagree with to the death, or what have you. Some Correct. Spin on that.
Yeah.
I've kind of gotten to a place where it's like, I'm not going to defend it to the death. Like, if someone's saying something evil, if someone's saying lies, I'm kind of at the point where it's like, I'm certainly not advocating violence, but I'm at a point personally where it's like, I've had enough of the lies. I've had enough of the propaganda used to destroy lives and to subvert the family or to ruin children's minds. So I'm kind of like, look, go do your own thing, but I don't know if there's any more neutral. You know, this whole idea of enlightenment, like neutral government, you know, live and let live. And I'm kind of like, man, I've always had this libertarian impulse, but this is not working. I feel like it's really, really challenged right now, you know, and it's almost reformulating a new way of thinking in my mind. Like, nature abhors a vacuum. And right now, I don't know if live and let live works. There's always going to be a reigning ideology. I'm still working through these ideas right now, you know?
I get it, man. I get it. But I'm telling you to resist it. Okay? Take my advice. Don't take my advice. I don't really care. But I went to University of Michigan.
Okay.
My first professor was a guy named Carl Cohen. He was a Jewish philosopher, libertarian philosopher. Okay, he is like this American historical figure that nobody really talks about, but he's huge. Okay, so he worked for the ACLU in during the time that the Skokie issue was coming up with the Nazis trying
Yeah.
to get a permit to march in Skokie, a largely Jewish suburb of Chicago.
Right. Right.
And he was the guy who helped write their oral argument that to be argued in court to defend the Nazis, people who wanted to see him die. Okay, that had a profound influence on me, man. The fact that this guy that is the fundamental of freedom. Okay, if you are, I know what you're saying. Like, yeah, they're attacking children. They way overstep their bounds. I completely disagree with it. It is evil. It is so pernicious. They cross the line that they can never cross. They should be held accountable. They should be thrown in prison. Okay, I'm with you on all of that.
Well,
okay?
I don't even think that. If I could just interject, I don't think thrown
Sure.
in prison. I just think, okay, the libertarian in me is screaming out inside, but I'd say, okay, this is actually outside of the realm of government. I think this is so far. It's so much more fundamental, in my opinion. And tell me what you think about this, or if I'm wrong on this. But this whole issue that you're facing in Glendale, and we're all facing in our local communities with wokeism and the radical indoctrination of children, this is so far, it's so much more important and fundamental than like even government control. Certainly than the federal government. They have nothing to do with this. It's not their purview. State government, it's too far removed for many of us. Sacramento's hours and hours north of us. But I think that all this needs to be adjudicated or figured out at the local level. And forget government. I think what you guys are doing, what the Armenian Americans are doing, what a lot of the Latinos are doing over in North Hollywood, and on and on and on, right? I think getting out there and having these discussions back and forth, just individual citizens, right? Members of the community, parents, I think have to work this out. And if you have a radical, like a foreign invader ideology, like a parasitic ideology, or one that's designed to tear apart your family or get inside your child's mind, I think that has to be extirpated, deracinated. It has to be ripped out, I think. And I'm not saying violently.
It has to
not
be ripped
violently.
out of the government. It has to be ripped out of the government.
Yes, because it's become like a religion. It's become part of the government. The government's pushing it and funding it.
Agreed.
Right?
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. Okay.
Yeah.
I also don't think that like people have the right to tell their kid that, or to affirm a child's transition, and especially like, I mean, sure, they have the right to like call their son a girl and refer to them under a different name. They have the right to do that. Sure, whatever, man. I disagree with it entirely. Okay, I think it's evil. I think it's abuse. I think it's a lie. I think it's a lie. But you are protected. It is your fundamental right before the government to lie. Okay,
right. Yeah,
you can do that.
Right.
If you fucking want to do that, sorry, I swore. If you want to do that, go do it.
Yeah,
keep it away from my kid. But I do not think that they have the right to give them puberty blockers, hormone therapy, to do sexual transition surgery on minors. That is child abuse. Okay, and I'll even go farther than that and say that like a doctor should not ever amputate anyone's genitalia, regardless of their age. I mean. That's not a libertarian concept. That's like a health concept. That's saying like, oh, we took the Hippocratic oath to do no harm, but we'll cut off, we'll sever and invert your penis because it makes you feel better.
Right.
Okay. So I'll go that far, but
no, I hear what you're saying. No, totally. Yeah. I get it. And certainly for Christians, it's an act of grave evil, to mutilate the body, mutilate the organ, remove its function to do what it was designed to do.
You're right that this goes beyond the government because the government has enshrined rights that go beyond the government.
Correct.
Right?
Right.
And we can't lose sight of that.
I'll go farther too. Even with the First Amendment, and this is where it's like, I'm not trying to spur on a whole other like hour or two of the conversation, but it's a good conversation. I'll go with it. The First Amendment says Congress shall make no law, and I'm definitely, I love the Bill of Rights. I'm a natural rights guy. Although I see some of the problems that the right has with natural rights, but certainly this is very, very important, right? The First Amendment, but it applies certainly to the federal government. It applies to Congress. Now, subsequent Supreme Court jurisprudence has basically pushed it onto or incorporated it to the states.
Of course.
And that's where I get okay, I love the Bill of Rights. I love the natural rights protected there. I think the Anti-Federalists were correct, by the way. That's an aside. If we didn't have the Anti-Federalists saying, no, we need to actually specifically put these in, because if not, we see what's going to happen. We wouldn't have any second
level, you're saying that when you say Anti-Federalist, you're saying a federal law that supersedes the entire country, right?
Right. The Anti-Federalists were really the true Federalists, ironically enough, but it was kind of an epithet, right? Where they were labeled the Anti-Federalists or whatever. But I don't want to go too far awry on that. But I guess what I'm saying is that at the highest level, the federal level, yes, the Bill of Rights is in full effect. The Supreme Court kind of forced it on the states. And it's like, whoa, I love the idea. I love the idea of every state having its own Bill of Rights that are very similar to the natural rights protections in the Bill of Rights. You see what I'm saying? But there's some of us who are almost questioning, I don't know about incorporation, a straight up constitutionalist. And I guess then when you get down to the local level, I'm kind of thinking man, doesn't the Glendale Unified, GUSD, don't they have the right to say that you can't bring pornography or gender queer into the library? I mean, yes, that would be a level of government, essentially, I don't want to say censoring, but preventing, this quote speech. And of course, it's really just an obscene book. But these are some of the ideas I'm kind of throwing out there that I'm thinking about and struggling with. Jordan,
I get it.
This is best handled locally. I think it's a subsidiarity concept. But,
but
go ahead.
You said Sacramento's 4 hours away, but this whole justification is right in our face. The whole justification for concealing a minor's gender identity from parents. Okay? Yeah. I'm using quotes because I don't agree with that.
Right.
In California, explicitly relies on Article 1, Section 1 of the state constitution, okay, which states that all persons have a right to protect their privacy. And they apply that to minors, which is insane, okay? So it's a misinterpretation of the Constitution, okay? So regardless, just forget for a second if it's the federal constitution or the state constitutions under the federalist system. This is all about interpretation of the law. That is always what common law has been about.
Right.
And I'd rather see a messy system where people get things wrong and it's sloppy over time, and then we gradually, through jurisprudence and through the people, we develop a common acceptance of, hopefully a better interpretation of the law.
Right.
It's not perfect.
And a tradition, right? And I don't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah. It's the people's
a tradition of interpreting the law, right? That's common law, essentially, in non-legal terms.
But it's the people, okay? We don't have this elite, I'm sorry, what's the French system? We have common law, they have what's the word?
Civil law.
Civil law. Like in Louisiana, they have civil law.
Correct.
Yeah, I don't want that.
Yeah.
I'd rather go through this mess. And
right.
It's unfortunate that children are suffering, okay? But still, man, the whole point of the American experience is to test against tyranny.
Right.
And it has to be challenged.
That's right.
It has to be challenged.
And I think one of the big things that I'm sure we're in agreement on is that natural rights are really important, and they are real things. Certainly for anyone coming from a religious background, or even in our American tradition, natural rights are very real, but they don't defend and uphold themselves, right? And I hate to say something so Captain Obvious here, but I love the Jeffersonian tradition. I love our Bill of Rights. I love the fact that conservatives can actually preserve the revolutionary concepts in the Declaration of Independence. I love that tension. I love that. That's part of the American experience, right? Because normally natural rights are very revolutionary, and I think that's why maybe Burke, maybe other classical conservatives were a little bit leery of natural rights. They can be a leveling force. Kind of like you invoke human rights, or someone invokes human rights. It's like, we're getting toward positive rights. But natural rights have to be defended, and that's why I love talking to people like yourself, and I love to see what's happening in Glendale, North Hollywood, and on and on and on, because natural rights die on the vine if people are not up in arms, and if people aren't getting out there and are defending it, because otherwise it's like, well, what's the tradition then? If you allow the tradition to change through time because we're atrophied and we're laying on the couch and we're all comfortable and watching Netflix, then a new tradition is going to take root. And for this whole experiment to work, our American experiment, which goes on every day in thousands of localities and municipalities around the country, for this to work, we can't go to sleep. We can't atrophy. I'm talking about myself. I'm talking about all of us, right? It sounds like that's what you're doing, or what you're largely saying down there in Glendale.
Yeah, and I'm all about peace. I'm all about civil discourse. I'm all about words.
Yeah, that's right. We do have to be careful that we're not goaded, and by we, I mean, liberty lovers and people who are just defending our traditions here. We have to make sure that we're not goaded into terrible or idiotic violence. Because I think one of the tactics that the woke left is using right now is kick the dog until the dog bites. And of course, in this metaphor, we're the dog. So kick that dog till it bites. But then what do you do with the dog that bites? You put it down, because we have to protect the kids. And we cannot let this happen. We cannot fall victim to idiotic violence, right? At these school board meetings, at these rallies, wherever it is, at Dodger Stadium tonight, remain peaceful. Remain peaceful tactically, as well as just morally. But the key thing is a tactic. You got to remain peaceful.
Yeah. This is the contradiction of the Constitution. Is when are your rights so intruded upon that you're then required to take up arms? And I don't have an answer for that. It terrifies me, man, like to my core. That fight that we saw at Glendale, which is the next board meeting, is June 20th. Okay, that's the next one, and it's going to be bigger. There are going to be more Antifa. There are going to be more Armenians and more community members.
Yeah.
Just get ready. I condemn violence. And in all the videos you see of that fight breaking out at the ground level, my voice is there on a megaphone. I ran over there. I was on the other side. I was like 200 feet away.
Yeah, I saw that.
I saw a skirmish, and I bolted for it. And I get up, and I stand up on like a rock or something. And I'm screaming on a megaphone, "Do not take the bait.
Yeah.
Do not be violent. Do not engage. Do not fight." The fight broke out.
Yeah.
This is hard to say. It's like, where do we draw the line?
Right.
They're coming for our kids. They're invading your rights. This is tyranny.
Yeah.
We've been through this before. We have the Second Amendment. And there are people who are ready to go, man. I'm not ready.
We gotta really be careful.
Do that. What's that?
Yeah, we got to just be really careful, be really prudent, remain peaceful. Certainly, everyone listening out there. But I take your point. At a certain point, it's like, this is scary. People getting in your face, people pushing a radical agenda, people overturning our culture, and people invading other kids' space, getting in your kid's face.
And people provoking violence. And then we have government officials, Gavin Newsom, Adam Schiff, Laura Friedman, Mayor Dan Brotman, right here in Glendale. They're all the Democratic, even Joe Biden is talking about it. The Democratic messaging is, these people are bigots and they have hate speech and they do not condemn Antifa. Antifa showed up to physically provoke people. And they did it. They were violent first. Straight up. They were
right.
Violent first. people have
Wherever
the
they're bringing these Antifa in from, I don't know where they bust them. I'm sure there are plenty in LA locally.
Hey,
Certainly.
I have okay, there were only a few, there were dozens there, okay, but
Okay.
there are reports, I've been told. I cannot verify this yet. I'm still doing it, but I've been told that police uh, intercepted 2 busfuls of Antifa at the June 6th meeting.
Doesn't surprise me.
There are going to be
I'm
more.
not.
There are going to be more coming in. The guy who was arrested, there was one Antifa member who was arrested. He has multiple previous arrests in all parts of the country. I'm talking Florida, the East Coast somewhere else, Midwest one place, and then upper West Coast, like Seattle area. He also had a previous arrest for molesting a 14-year-old girl.
They always do. Disgusting.
I don't know if they always do, but this guy did.
So much of the time they do. Yeah.
And the Democratic Party defends, well, they defend them with omission. Okay. They don't say anything. And once this starts happening, and we have radical factions of the Democratic Party, if you could call it the Democratic Party, I'll just say it, the radical left party, whatever. They they get free reign to do this stuff. Sure, one of them might get arrested, bailed out, right? They never get condemned publicly by the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party has painted themselves into a corner where they've been denying even the existence of Antifa for years, to the point now where they can't admit it.
Yeah.
And that's tactful as well on their part. Not tactful, but it's a tactic. And that is where we have to defend ourselves physically in the street. Okay. And I don't condone the violence, but I do condone self-defense, which is what happened. And this is the line. This line, to me, is one of those things that has a life in and of itself. That, like, when do you actually engage physically? And that I will continually condemn it, continually.
Right.
But here it is. It's in our face.
Yeah, and beware of these instigators and these people who are out there provoking, because they are the regime's foot soldiers. I firmly believe that. And I'm not saying, they're paid by the regime or by the feds or anything like that, but they're out there enforcing the new national religion. And
Kamala
what
Harris
they want,
bailed out Antifa, so whatever.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I mean, they're supported by the regime. They're doing the regime's work, and then the regime, as you say, they kind of ignore it, or they omit it, talking about it. They kind of poo-poo or tisk. Yeah. They caused, of course, billions of dollars in damage in the summer of hate of 2020. But they're kind of like, they're over there. Antifa's really more of an idea. It's not even really a thing, right?
They were BLM. They were BLM, and BLM got exposed for all that corruption. Now they're this LGBTQ stuff in schools,
right?
But they are Antifa is they're obviously, I'm speaking to the choir right now. They're obviously fascists, but they are establishment fascists.
Yes, they're establishment. That's right.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, Jordan. Only a couple minutes here. I don't want to keep you too long, but what's kind of the goal on, I think you said Tuesday night, is that June 20th? And what's the resolution that you are hoping for, where do you want this to go in Glendale?
Long term, we need to copy what Temecula is doing right now. They're banning, or they're not banning, they're just restricting, like, topics on Harvey Milk, for instance, who love Jim Jones up until right up until the Kool-Aid suicide incident. Tragedy, man. A Marxist tragedy. Yet another. He was also a pedophile. He dated teenage boys. We know this. There's
Harvey
documented
Milk.
evidence of that.
Yeah, he's a well-known pederast, right?
Right. I don't know the difference between pedophile and pederast, but I'll just say pedophile.
Yeah. No, either way. Yeah. I'm with you there. I think pederast is targeting juveniles. It's all disgusting. It's all abhorrent behavior.
They're minors, dude.
They're minors. Yeah, it's disgusting. Criminal behavior.
The Temecula also banned the pride flag. Well, they just restricted it. It has no business being in a government institution. Okay.
Right.
Chino Valley Unified is they're bucking the state right now with that board policy, or the state board of ed policy about concealing information from adults, from parents. Right. Saying they're forcing transparency on the district. Okay, so Chino Valley is doing that. There was their assembly person, I forget the name, put forward AB 1314. That was for
Mm-hmm.
required transparency for parents. And the Democratic Party, the Democratic Assembly people refused to even discuss it in committee. So
Yeah.
that got stopped in its tracks, but Chino Valley said, no, we're still going to institute this at the local level. That's what I want. We
Okay.
need political power to fight these specific policies that are violating our rights. That is how we're going to do this. That's how we play the game. We play the game by putting people in power. Right now, we only have Democrats. We have radicals on our school board. Okay, I'm saying radicals. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and then we have radical sympathizers who just have no spine, and
Yeah.
they just get used by these people. Um, we need to get them out of power immediately. I'm going to run for school board in my area.
Okay. I was going to ask. I'm like, dude,
Yeah,
you sound like a great candidate. Are you running for something locally
I am
to
running for
Glendale?
school board.
Okay.
I'm running for
Okay.
school board. Yeah. We need to make this about the children and their families. My children, my family, which means everybody. We're in this together, man. We need to protect their rights against the government, which is like abusing this right to privacy to basically justify abuse for a minor. That we have
Sure.
this is what we're up against. We have to rid the schools of Learning for Justice, of the Southern Poverty Law Center. Man, these are explicitly leftist organizations.
Right.
We need to. I understand that neutrality is a facade, or basically uh, a fantasy, a fiction in government. I get it, dude. But I am all about the pursuit of neutrality in the government, and I am certainly about the absolute rejection of that spiritual, that Gnostic belief structure that is dressed up like a materialist point of view or a philosophical point of view, but it's actually a religious point of view being forced in the
Yes.
government. I am
Right.
all about that, and I will explicitly say that. That is explicitly what I'm going after, okay? I've
Yeah.
read all the theory. I understand the cult to the core. I spent years preparing myself for this,
Yeah. Yeah.
and we are here. I am here to very simply represent parents, families, rights to privacy. That's it.
Awesome. Well,
So
I'll tell you what, man. If I lived in Glendale, you would have my vote. In the meantime, though, what I'm going to do is keep watching what you're putting, following what you're doing down there, cheering you on. You come on the podcast anytime you want. It's been a fascinating conversation. Before we wrap up, because there's so much to talk about, I feel like we could keep chatting. I want to let you go, but where can people follow you and kind of
sure.
keep up to date with what's going on, and what should people do to stay engaged?
Yeah, follow me on Instagram, Henry4Glendale. That's the number 4. And then follow me on Twitter at Irrational Henry. And then we have another group called GUSD. This is on Instagram, GUSD Parents Voices. That's
Okay.
GUSD_parents_voices. And that's like a purely Armenian parent group that
Okay.
that I work with directly or indirectly. Really, I don't run that group, but we talk to each other all the time. We support each other,
Awesome.
and yeah. So that group actually has like most of the information that's going on in the district right on their Instagram page. It's
Cool.
beautiful, man. And then June 20th is our next school board meeting. So tune in. There's a lot going on there.
Are you going to have any kind of live feed or anything, or be reporting on your Instagram page or anything like that?
I'm too busy when I'm there because I'm just talking to people directly, and I just
Yeah.
don't have the time. But just follow us, and you'll see footage and follow the news, and
Will do.
you could chime in on the GUSD website. They have a live stream of the inside of the school board meeting. We'll be outside.
Okay.
But come on down, honestly. I mean, we don't want like outside agitators, but we don't care. We would love outside support.
Peaceful outside supporters, right?
That's right. That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Jordan, you've been really generous with your time. I thank you. I think we had a really good, lively, and fascinating conversation. I hope all of our listeners agree. Make sure to follow Jordan's great work. If you're down in Glendale, make sure, or at least consider giving him your vote. But for crying out loud, vote for him, support him. And I want to thank everyone for tuning in to the California Liberty Project. Thank you once again, Jordan.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. Really a pleasure, man.
Thank you.
All right.
This has been the California Liberty Project podcast. Make sure to subscribe, share it with others, and follow us on Instagram and Twitter.